Welcome everyone to another edition of What's on Tap. Today our topic is going to be understanding Reg F limited content messages and call frequency requirements. I'll be your moderator today. I'm Mike Doherty, the Philadelphia office of Weltman Weinberg. I'm joined here today by Andy Condiles. Andy is our expert in the Pennsylvania and New Jersey field of collections. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
And I got Scott Best here as well. Scott is running the Jersey practice of Weltman. Scott's been here for quite some time. So Scott, thank you for taking the time to come out.
Thanks for having me.
And again, to our folks out there, I can't express enough the appreciation for the support you give us for putting each of these episodes out there. So thank you very much. We love putting these episodes out. We love answering your questions. Please keep the questions coming, even if you don't have any during the course of the episode. And after the fact, you thought of a few, send us those questions. We love answering them. We love talking to you. And one of the things we love the best is the feedback I get at certain conferences when you folks walk up to me and say, hey, Mike, I recently tried that beer you recommended and it was awesome. So that does make us feel good that we're just not talking to ourselves because it's not really enjoyable just talking to Scott and Andy all the time. So I appreciate it. So with that in mind, our newest beer is kind of a unique one. I'm going to date myself here. There was a show on TV probably about 30, 40 years ago called it was a Philadelphia sports TV show called The Great Sports Debate. And it featured some local announcers who spoke on a TV channel that no longer exists. And apparently they put a beer out and we saw it and we figured, you know what, we can't say no to this. So our beer of the day is the Great Sports Debate beer. And the best part about it is the proceeds of the purchase for this beer. Scott, I think they go to pediatric cancer. Is that correct?
Correct. It goes to support local pediatric cancer research. So Conshohocken Brewing has a number of places throughout the Delaware Valley. Their tap rooms are always great, but it's always great to drink for a cause rather than just for empty calories. So
I definitely agree. So let's get on with it. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about limited content messages and call frequency. It's strange that we're going to be talking about this again. This topic relates to the CFPB debt collection rules, and they came out about 2 years, give or take. So you would think most people in the industry would have adopted these rules by now, but what we're seeing is there's been slow adoption. And when we talk to our clients, we talk to a lot of different folks, we find out that they're really not doing all the things that the CFPB has given them the ability to do to protect themselves in these different types of safe harbors. So we thought it'd be a very good topic to kind of a refresher to some, something new for others. So like I said, the limited content message is something that was developed by the CFPB in their debt collection rules. And what it does, it provides a safe harbor for when you're attempting to communicate with your member, your consumer, related to an obligation. And the beauty of it is that safe harbor protects you from an unauthorized third-party disclosure. And a lot of us know there is a lot of litigation related to that. So what is a limited contact message? It's three things. First, it's a voicemail. It's not a text. It's not an email. There's other rules that deal with that within the debt collection rules that apply to voicemail and email. So it's a voicemail you leave. It's directed to a consumer. So if you inadvertently contact a third party at a number you believe to have been the consumer or your members, this will still provide that safe harbor. Now, if you knowingly use that number to contact a third party, different story. You're not going to get that protection. And then the third piece of it is there's certain required content that you have to have. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that required content. So the required content is the first thing, which makes perfect sense, is you need to identify when you leave a voicemail message, your name. So whether you're a business, whether you're a credit union, whether you're a bank, you need to leave your name on the message. Calling from Main Street Credit Union. So when you leave that message, you actually need the name. You also, not oddly enough, but common sense enough, need to say, please contact us. So you can't be just calling, hanging up. It's please contact us. You also must give, this is the unique part, a name of a person. In the past, what we saw was please call collection department. Please call us back at this number. Now, under the new rules, you need to call back a specific person. You need to call back Jenny. Call back Jenny at Main Street Credit Union. So that's what your message must entail. And you also must give a telephone number, which makes a lot of sense. You also make sure it's a good number. So it's really a pretty simple rule as far as the required content. Your message can be as simple as we talked about Jenny. Jenny, please call back credit union at 867-5309. So something as simple as that. Now, if you do that, that will provide your safe harbor. Now, the CFPB also said, you know what? We can let you say a few more things too. Those additional things you might be able to say are common sense. A salutation. You can say hello. The CFPB is very good to us, right? They let you say hello.
It's nice to be courteous, or
Yes,
them allow us to be courteous.
Good people, that federal government. You can say hello, good morning, or good afternoon. You can also indicate the date or the time of the message. Hello, this is Jenny calling at Friday at 10 a.m. You can also suggest times to respond. Hey, it's best for you to return this call Monday through Friday between 9 and 5. And then you can also say, hey, if you can't reach me, Jenny, you can reach anyone in my department. Now, this is a unique aspect here. When I say something like that, one of our credit unions in the past said, well, Mike, we recently had that, and someone filed a suit for us against us because we thought we were following it. I said, well, let me hear the message. And the message said, yes, this is Jenny from credit union. Please call me between time X and Y. If I'm not available, please contact anyone else at our collection unit. What was the mistake there, guys?
It was too general in who to contact.
And the magic word, right? Collection unit.
Correct.
So the key to that would be, the idea related to this limited content message is if a person inadvertently were to hear this message, they would not know it's related to any sort of debt collection. So even though it would seem a proper thing, I'm in the collection unit, which she was, you can't say that word. In addition, and it's really not going to affect a lot of our credit union clients, if your caller ID has a word or name that might lead itself to indicate collections, you can't do that either. Also, if the name of your company, again, not affecting our folks here in the credit unions, have a name that might indicate it's a collection unit, you can't do that either. And like I said, if you think about it, it's such a simple process to use. If you follow these guidelines, you'll never get jammed up for an unauthorized third-party disclosure. Now, because everything in the world is complicated, here's where the twist arrives. You get complete protection if you use that message. But what if you're in a state that requires you to provide more information? And there's a lot of states that do. Well, you no longer get the protection of the limited content message if you provide the information that another state actually requires you to put in.
So I've heard it that you can't break the law to comply with the law, not that you're breaking the law per se, but that you'll be responsible one way or the other when the rules conflict.
Absolutely. So,
which is ridiculous, but
it
that's the way
absolutely
that it is.
I agree with this guy, and that's why you got to be careful that consult your local consult your attorneys related to what are the requirements in your state, because I've seen people say, well, I left a limited content message. I followed it the whole way through. Well, you're in state X, which also requires you to say this. Did you say it? Well, no, because the federal government said I don't need to say this. You just got to be careful, because the idea of the Zortman messages, the FODI messages, they're kind of in the past. And the CFPB did give us a way to protect ourselves. They did give us some rules of the game, but we just got to be careful. So that's a limited content message. Now, when you leave that message, you're talking about telephone call frequencies. How often can you call? And the rules basically don't say anything towards a definitive yes or no about how many times. The standard is oppressiveness, abusiveness, harassment. However, what they do create is a lot of presumptions that if you do things a certain way, you will get protection of those presumptions. And that's where I'm going to kick it off to you, Andy. Tell us about those presumptions. Specifically, I think it's the 7-7 rule?
Right, 7-7 rule.
Tell us about that.
So 7-7 rule has two prongs. There's the call frequency prong, and there's the customer contact prong. The call frequency prong says you cannot call a customer more than 7 times in 7 days. And the customer contact prong says once you contact someone and speak with them, you're not allowed to call them for another 7 days.
Okay, so let's break that down. So it's 7 calls maximum within 7 days.
Correct.
Okay. And that's for basically leaving messages, give or take? Is that, assuming you haven't spoken to the person?
Right. Yeah, it could be anything, just, yes.
Okay. Now, tell me again, what happens when you speak, if you have the opportunity to speak to the person?
Right, so once you speak with the person, you have to wait another 7 days to have contact with them. However, if they give you permission to reach out to them, for example, if you talk to them on a Tuesday and they say, hey, give me a call on a Friday to discuss this more, you can go ahead and give them a call on the Friday, even though it's less than 7 days from when you originally spoke with them. But I also point out that that the customer does have the right to revoke that consent. So if they use that little example, talk to them on Tuesday, they say, give me a call back on Friday, but on Thursday they say, hey, don't bother calling me, then you cannot go ahead and call them until that 7-day period expires.
Well, let me talk about that for a minute. So I speak to someone on a Tuesday, they give me permission. I guess is it very important? I've got to document that, right? I'm going to be documenting that?
Yeah, absolutely. You should be documenting conversation, any consent they give you, and any revocation of that consent. Yeah, absolutely document the conversation you're having.
Okay. So what else about the 7-7 rule is there that we should be aware of?
So the 7-7 rule, again, primarily focuses on phone calls. And again, 7 calls in 7 days, or 7 attempts to contact them in 7 days. However, while it doesn't discuss things like emails, text messages, things like that, if you call them maybe 6 times in 7 days, I wouldn't suggest you then drop 30 emails on them, because that could certainly be considered oppressive, even though it doesn't violate the technical text of the 7-7 rule.
Okay, I follow you there. So even though you are complying with the presumption of the 7-7 rule, are they kind of looking at the totality of all the different types of contacts?
Yeah, that totality would probably be an excellent word to describe what they're doing. So yeah, just because you're calling them less than the max number of times doesn't mean your conduct as a whole cannot be considered oppressive.
Okay, now take me through a situation where I've got a member who's got 2 delinquent accounts. Can I call him 7 times on each account?
So, good question. So the 7-7 rule is both per person and per debt.
Okay.
So you're allowed to call them maximum number of times, maximum 7 times per debt.
Okay, so in the example I gave, you would be able to call 7, assuming they didn't pick up,
Right.
7 times on the one obligation, and in the same week, if they had a second one, 7 times as well.
Correct. However, if you do leave a message, you want to make sure that the message is very clear as to what debt you're referring to. If it's just, hey, I'm from ABC Credit Union, that's presumed to apply to all the debts that they have with that credit union. So you want to be very specific if you are leaving a message as to what you are referring to.
Well, I take that one step back. You probably can't do that, right? In the sense that you can't indicate the outstanding obligation, right? So you probably just want to indicate. So taking that to its natural ending, if you call the one time and your system generates it towards that one account,
Right.
as long as you're internally tracking it, you're okay, right?
Correct.
Okay, I follow you there. That makes a lot of sense. So that's some of the, are there any other exceptions we want to talk about?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Actually, there's one other exception. I apologize. So if the person has 2 phone numbers, you can't call both phone numbers 7 times. You can contact the person 7 times. If you have 2 phones, you call one 4 times and one 3 times, but you cannot call both phones each 7 times.
Okay, so if there's one obligation owed, but the member has 2 different phone numbers,
Right.
it's the total of 7 between them both combined.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. So Scott, is there anything excluded from this call frequency?
So the frequency rules, there are exclusions, one of which is, Andy mentioned it before, if there's prior consent. So if you do talk to someone, generally speaking, if they don't give you consent, you have to wait 7 days before you can try to speak to them again. However, they can say, you can give me a call later this week, or keep trying, I'm not available now, but you can attempt to contact me. You definitely, as we've discussed, you definitely want to notate that in your file that They gave you authority if you're talking to them on a Tuesday to call them back on a Thursday. They're available until 6 o'clock or between 4 and 6. You want to note all of that in your file so that you don't violate the rule. The other thing is, if you do then talk to them, you need to get a second, you need to continually ask for permission to call them back within that 7-day period. It's not a, sure you can give, I'm not available on this Tuesday, but give me a call back. You can't then, that doesn't last indefinitely. It's only good for a period of time. And then the next time you talk to them, you have to get permission again to call them back again.
So let's look at that, Scott. So if I speak to a person on a Monday, and we have a conversation about the obligation, and if I don't ask for permission to call back to continue the conversation, I then have to wait 7 days?
Correct.
Okay. So it's very important then to get that permission.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive when you're having a conversation back and forth with someone that, do I have permission to call you back even though we're in the midst of this discussion? That's what the rules require, so that's what you have to comply with. So yes, if you do continually have to ask for permission to call someone back.
And I don't want to belabor it, but I think Andy mentioned it, documentation.
Yeah, document. And as Andy said, if it's good, if you do speak to them and they have multiple accounts, if you only talk to them on the one account, it doesn't, it's a question of if you're talking on all accounts or just the one account. That's another factor that, depending on how you note your file. Some other exceptions are calls that are not connected. So if it's a busy signal or you get the not in service, that doesn't count even though you're attempting to call them. Okay. There's not an actual communication. And then the third one is calls placed to a third-party representative for a consumer, either their attorney, a debt settlement company, someone along those lines. Those you don't have, there's no restrictions with regard to those calls. Okay. Obviously, there's courtesy of how much you're calling someone, but there's not a, it's not a CFPB restriction when you're talking to an attorney, how much you can call them.
So an authorized third party, this 7-7 rule does not apply.
Correct.
Okay, and same thing, you want to document who that authorized third party
Correct.
is?
You always want to have your notes updated as far as who the authorized rep might be for purposes of communication.
Let me give you an interesting scenario. Let's say I'm calling someone and their voicemail is full. So does that count as an attempt? That does not count as an attempt?
It does. There's lots of different things that do count that you would think don't necessarily count. One is you call in it goes to voicemail, but voicemail's full, even though you don't actually connect with the person or able to leave a message. That does count towards the call frequency prong. Same thing as calls that just ring endlessly and don't go to an answer. They count. Calls that go to direct to voicemail. Again, it doesn't ring. You'd make no contact with anyone. That counts. Call is answered but then drops. That counts. Call rings, but you hang up before either a person answers or a voicemail picks up. Similarly, those all count towards the 7-7 requirement.
Okay, let me break that down a little bit. I think I need a playbook here.
Yeah.
So what I got here, you initially said, so if I'm making a call and before they pick up, it drops. That doesn't count, right? Before they pick up.
No, that does count.
So that does count.
Yes.
So if I make a call and the call gets disconnected, that counts. And
correct.
If I make a call, they pick up and it drops after I'm speaking to them, that counts.
That also counts.
I'm making a call, I get voicemail.
That counts.
Let me see what I'm making a call. What I'm missing one here. So making a call.
Voicemail's full.
Voicemail's full.
That counts. Pretty much the only ones that don't count are if you get a busy signal, which I couldn't tell you the last time I've gotten a
what
busy.
What does that sound like?
I don't even know. Calling cell phones, you don't get busy signals anymore.
But a ring through, that counts too?
A ring, yeah, that would. The only things that don't count are busy signals, or if you get the beep, beep, beep numbers no longer in service.
Wow, okay, so that's interesting to know. So basically pretty much almost any attempt counts.
Almost any attempt counts unless you're calling, unless it's someone who still has a landline and you're calling in, you actually get a busy signal. So then another item that comes up are calls about settlement. Those are also to be factored, and actually the call frequency rules in that situation, which again, it's kind of not expected because you're trying to resolve something and you and the consumer having a back and forth, but the call frequency rules do apply in those situations. So there's not an exception for that. Similarly, as we discussed, you still have to make sure you get the permission to call, to return the call, even though you and I are trying to resolve it. I still have to ask you for permission to call you back. They can revoke it during the course of the conversation. That if they don't see it going anywhere, they say, stop calling me. Even though they had given prior consent and it's within that 7-day period, you have to stop.
Now, revocation, that could be during the course of the conversation, can be by an email, can be by a text.
Correct.
Basically, any way the consumer wants to revoke, right?
Yeah, correct. It can be in any reasonable form, I guess, if they put it in the newspaper or something. But if it's email by text, they call and leave you a voicemail saying, I'm done, don't call me anymore. That ends their prior consent, even though you might have had a series of consents. Although I don't know about you guys, if it takes 7 calls to work out a deal, I'm doing something wrong, but we'll leave that as it is.
That is true. So tell me a little bit about, I've heard this concept of a consumer benefit call. What is a consumer benefit call?
So these are calls made in the course of your handling a consumer account where you think it will be beneficial to them to receive a call. The easiest way to do it, or it's a way to have them avoid a bad effect. So if someone's about to default on a payment or they're about to miss a payment, you can call them and say, your payment's due, we haven't gotten it yet, we don't see that you've contacted us. You are able to make those calls to try to get, so that they don't default on the loan.
So just so I understand correctly, a consumer benefit call, the 7-7 rule doesn't apply, and for it to be a consumer benefit, kind of means that, hey, we're trying to avoid some adverse action happening to you. So we're going to reach out to you to avoid a late fee, to avoid a default.
Correct.
Something along those lines?
Yeah, something before it's in a default status, before the real collection process has begun on the, after it goes into default, you run the risk of incurring late fees, additional costs. Your payment's due, you're going to miss your payment. Similarly, there's response calls that if they call you, if the consumer or the member calls you asking for additional information related to their account, you can attempt to call them back outside of the 7-7 rule to try to convey that information. Similarly, if a call gets disconnected while giving them that information, you can call them back to finalize the call. You don't have to wait 7 days to call them back to provide them the information they're asking
That
for.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's one aspect of this that does make sense.
So with that in mind, I think a question just came by, and Andy, I think you'd be the best one to handle it. So talking about the 7-7 rule, I think what they're talking about, interesting, does a holiday apply to 7 days?
It does.
It does, okay. So when we're talking Christmas Eve, that's part of that 7-day period.
So the rule says 7 consecutive days.
Weekends, holidays, everything.
There you go.
Okay, interesting. And folks, we appreciate it. I mean, we know this is an interesting, very interesting aspect of a very focused part of the collection process. So feel free to continue to email us questions about this. We appreciate it as always. Thank you for being here as always. We appreciate it. And I'd be remiss not to recommend Coffee with Casey, Ask a Pro, some of our other series. There's a lot of great content coming from a lot of the folks here at Weltman, so I definitely would recommend to check that content out. There's going to be a questionnaire at the end of this that you'll receive. Please say only good things about myself. Andy and Scott don't really care one way or the other. Whatever you have to say is good by me. Good things for me would be appreciated. And our sales and marketing team, great team they are, they're going to make sure they get a copy of the PowerPoint out to all of you who have participated today. So feel free to reach out to Scott, Andy, or myself with any questions. And next up, our next webinar, our next, podcast, is going to be October 9th. And it's going to be why understanding cram downs in bankruptcy is more important than ever. I think, Scott, that's going to be yourself and Cam are going to be
I
putting that
believe
on.
so, yep.
Okay. Well, thank you very much once again for your time. And any questions, just let us know. Thank you.